$250,000 is the most dangerous net worth in America. And I know that sounds dramatic, but let me show you why. Picture two guys, Noah and Lee, both 34, both just crossed the $250,000 line in the same month. Same milestone, same celebratory glass of mediocre champagne. 6 months later, Lee gets rear-ended by an uninsured driver, ends up in a lawsuit, and watches a third of his net worth disappear into a settlement his auto insurance didn't cover. Noah, same scenario in an alternate timeline, walks away without losing a dollar. The difference? Noah had spent $32 a month on a piece of paper most people have never heard of. Both these guys did everything right to get to $250,000. They saved, they invested, they avoided the dumb car payment. But only one of them understood that the rules completely change once you actually have something to protect. The habits that got you to $250,000 will quietly sabotage you if you don't upgrade, and almost none of what you should be buying next looks like wealth. My name is Nick, and I've spent way too much time studying why some people break through to real wealth while others get stuck spinning in place at 6 figures forever. If you're somewhere on the climb and want to make sure you don't quietly leak everything you've built, make sure to hit that subscribe button, because what we're about to go through is the stuff nobody tells you in your 20s. All right, before we dive in, let me paint you a picture of what $250,000 actually means in 2026. According to the Federal Reserve's most recent survey of consumer finances, the median household net worth in America is around $192,000. So if you've hit $250,000, you are already sitting in the top 25% of US households. And if you're under 35, you're closer to the top 10% for your age group. That's the good news. The slightly less good news is that a Charles Schwab survey found that 61% of Americans think $250,000 is the milestone for actual financial freedom, but only 14% of people ever get there, which means most of your friends, your family, and your coworkers have absolutely no roadmap for what comes next. They just assume you keep doing the same thing forever. And that's exactly where people get hurt, because at $250,000, your money starts behaving differently. It can compound on its own, it attracts lawsuits, it triggers taxes, and it becomes a target for institutions that very politely want to take a piece. So let's talk about the 7 things you should actually start buying once you hit this number, starting with the one that saved Noah. Number 1 is an umbrella insurance policy. And I know the second you hear the word insurance, your brain starts trying to escape this video. Stick with me, because this one is genuinely insane. Umbrella insurance is liability coverage that sits on top of your auto and home insurance. So if you get sued for more than your existing policies cover, the umbrella kicks in. Here's where the math gets absurd. The average car insurance liability cap in this country is something like $250,000 per person and $500,000 per accident, which sounds like a lot until you remember that one ER visit, one surgery, and one wrongful injury claim can easily blow through that number like it's tissue paper. According to Progressive, the average cost of a $1 million umbrella policy is about $383 a year. NerdWallet says they start as low as $200, even in the most expensive states like Florida. You're looking at $700 to maybe $1,200. For $1 million of liability protection, that works out to roughly $1 a day, which is less than what most people spend on their morning gas station coffee. It's the cheapest insurance you can buy per dollar protected. And I know what you're thinking. You've never been sued. You're a careful person. Here's the thing about catastrophic events. The whole point is that you don't see them coming. Umbrella policies aren't really for the rich. They're for the people who are starting to have something worth taking. Below $100,000 in net worth, lawyers honestly aren't that interested in you. There's not much to recover, but once you cross $250,000 with a house, a brokerage account, retirement balances, and visible income, you become what's politely called a collectible defendant. Translation, you're worth suing. The dog bites a neighbor, your teenager rear-ends someone, a guest slips on your icy front step, and suddenly has a very compelling story about chronic back pain. Without an umbrella, every dollar above your auto and home limits is exposed. That's the policy Noah had. Lee didn't. Same accident, two completely different outcomes. All right, umbrella insurance protects your money from outside threats, but the biggest threat to your $250,000 isn't a lawsuit. It's the people you're supposed to trust. Which brings us to number 2. Hiring a fee-only fiduciary financial planner. And I can already hear you thinking, Nick, I don't have enough money for a real financial advisor. That's a $5 million people thing. Here's the truth. The cost benefit on this completely flips at $250,000. Below this number, paying somebody $2,500 for a financial plan eats a real chunk of your net worth. Above it, the math inverts. A good planner running a one-time comprehensive plan typically costs somewhere between $1,500 and $3,500. Hourly fee-only planners usually run $200 to $400 an hour. And just optimizing where your money sits across taxable, traditional, and Roth accounts can save you well over 1% per year in long-term tax drag. On a $250,000 portfolio, that's $2,500 a year. Right there, year one, the plan pays for itself and then keeps paying you forever. Now, I have to be crystal clear because this is where most people get destroyed. There is a massive difference between a fee-only fiduciary and what most people call a financial advisor. A fee-only fiduciary is paid by you, period. No commissions, no product kickbacks, no hidden incentives. They are legally required to act in your best interest. A commission-based advisor, on the other hand, is paid by selling you stuff. So when you walk into a big-name brokerage and a 25-year-old in a blazer who passed his Series 7 last Tuesday kindly offers you a free portfolio review, what's actually happening is that you are the product. They make money when you buy what they're selling, which is often whole life insurance, annuities, or actively managed funds with embedded fees that quietly chip away at your returns for the next 30 years. Specifically, search the phrase fee-only fiduciary near me. That phrase is the cheat code. If somebody can't say the words, I am a fee-only fiduciary without dancing around it, you walk out. Now, if you're still with me, here's where the math gets really fun because we haven't even touched the biggest leak yet. Number 3 is a real tax strategy, which almost always means buying yourself a CPA. Taxes are the single largest expense in your life, bigger than your rent, your mortgage, your car, your groceries combined, and most people in the $250,000 range are still filing through TurboTax at 11 p.m. the night before April 15th, eating cold pizza, and aggressively Googling what counts as a deduction, which is fine, except you are now leaving thousands of dollars on the table every single year. Let me show you. If you have a high deductible health plan, the HSA contribution limit for 2026 is $4,400 for individuals and $8,750 for families. The HSA is the only triple tax advantage account that exists. Tax deductible going in, tax-free growth, tax-free withdrawals for medical expenses. If you're not maxing it, that's just money you handed the IRS for no reason. Then there's the mega backdoor Roth, which sounds like a wrestling move, but is actually one of the best wealth building tools nobody uses. If your 401k plan allows after-tax contributions and in-plan conversions, you can stuff tens of thousands of extra dollars per year into a Roth and let it grow completely tax-free for the rest of your life. There's also the backdoor Roth IRA for anyone making over $168,000 single or $252,000 married, because at that income level, you can't contribute directly to a Roth anymore. So you go through the side door, which is fully legal, and the IRS knows you're doing it. And finally, tax loss harvesting, strategically selling positions that are down to offset gains elsewhere. The IRS lets you write off up to $3,000 of ordinary income per year plus unlimited gains. Noah hired a CPA in his first year at $250,000, cost him $1,400. That CPA found him an additional $4,300 in deductions and tax savings the first year alone. He's now paid for himself 3 times over, and we haven't even gotten to year 2. The shift from being a TurboTax person to being a CPA person is one of those tiny upgrades that quietly compounds for the rest of your life. Number 4, let me tell you about the worst possible day for a guy I knew back in 2008. He had a $300,000 portfolio, no cash reserve, and he just got laid off from a job he thought was permanent. He needed to cover his mortgage, his car payment, and groceries while he found another job. So he sold $25,000 worth of stock right at the bottom of the financial crisis. Stock he had specifically bought to hold for 30 years. That $25,000, if he'd kept it invested through the recovery, would be worth somewhere around $140,000 today. He sold at the worst possible moment because he had to. That's why you need a real emergency fund, not the $1,000 fund Dave Ramsey told you about when you were 22, a real one. 6 to 12 months of expenses sitting in a high-yield savings account or short-term treasuries doing essentially nothing exciting. And before you tell me cash is trash, I get it. Sitting in cash feels like financial blasphemy when you've spent years training yourself to invest every dollar you can. But here's the thing. You probably built your $250,000 during one of the strongest market periods in modern history. You haven't really been tested. According to research on wealth distribution, the typical household with $1 to $2 million in net worth has roughly 66% of their wealth tied up in their primary home and retirement accounts. They look rich on paper, but their cash position is honestly pretty embarrassing. So when life punches them in the face, they get forced into exactly the move that guy in 2008 made. High-yield savings accounts are paying around 3.8% to 4.5% in 2026, and short-term treasuries are paying similarly. Your cash isn't even sitting idle anymore. Your emergency fund isn't a drag on your portfolio. It's the insurance policy that lets the other 90% of your money stay invested through chaos. At $250,000, your job is to never be forced to sell, which brings us to number 5. Let me tell you about a guy I'll call Steve. Steve was 39, divorced, 2 kids, no will, no trust, no power of attorney, nothing. He'd built his net worth up to about $340,000 through 15 years of disciplined investing. He died in a freak skiing accident on a Tuesday. His family ended up in a fluorescent-lit probate court arguing with a clerk for 11 months. By the time everything was settled, $19,000 of Steve's estate had gone to court fees, attorney fees, and administrative costs. His specific wishes about who got what. Public record, his ex-wife and his current girlfriend stopped talking to each other. The kids ended up in the middle. That is what dying without an estate plan looks like, and it happens to people in their 30s and 40s far more often than anyone wants to admit. Steve, by the way, was exactly the kind of guy who told himself every January that he'd handle his estate planning that year. Lee, if you're listening, this part is for you. Number 5 is an estate plan. A revocable living trust, a pour-over will, a durable power of attorney, and a healthcare directive, the whole kit. Probate in most states takes anywhere from 6 months to 2 years and costs anywhere from 3% to 7% of your total estate in fees. Every single document becomes public record, which means your nosy neighbor can pull up exactly what you left behind and to whom. A trust skips probate entirely. Your assets transfer privately, quickly, and according to exactly what you wrote down. You can DIY one for around $400 using legitimate platforms, or you can pay an estate attorney $1,500 to $3,000 to do the full package, which I'd honestly recommend if you own real estate or have anyone depending on you. A trust is not about being old. A trust is about not leaving your family a logistical nightmare during the worst week of their lives. Once you have real assets, this isn't optional. It's just deferred work that gets dramatically more expensive when it's no longer your problem. If you're still with me, the next one might save your family more than anything else on this list. Number 6 is income protection, specifically term life insurance and disability insurance if you have anyone who depends on you financially. Now, if you're single with no dependents, I can already hear you tuning out. Hold on. Disability still applies to you. We'll get there. We are talking about term life insurance, not whole life, not universal life, not indexed, universal life, term. The reason is brutal. Whole life policies pay the salesperson, the guy in the slightly too shiny suit at the dinner seminar, a commission that's typically 50% to 110% of your first year premium. Term life pays that same guy maybe 1/10 of that. So guess which one gets pushed harder? A 20 or 30-year leveled term policy for $1 million typically costs a healthy 35-year-old somewhere between $30 and $60 a month. For the equivalent coverage, a whole life policy would cost you 8 to 12 times that. The general rule of thumb is to carry 10 to 12 times your annual income in coverage. If you make $100,000, you want $1 million policy. Now, disability insurance, statistically, if you're under 50, you are way more likely to become disabled than to die. And if your paycheck disappears for 2 years because of a back injury or chronic illness, your entire wealth building plan freezes. Most employers offer some short-term disability, but the gap between that and full long-term coverage is huge. A private long-term policy is often surprisingly affordable, and it's the move that keeps your $250,000 from quietly becoming $80,000 while you're recovering. The point of insurance isn't to make you rich. It's to make sure one bad event doesn't undo everything you've already done. All right, last one. And this one might be the most important on the entire list because nothing else matters if you're too burned out to enjoy any of it. Number 7 is buying back your time. Once you cross $250,000, your time becomes worth dramatically more than it used to be. Let's do some math. If you make $200,000 a year and you work roughly 2,000 hours, your time is worth about $100 an hour, which means every Saturday you spend mowing your own lawn for 4 hours, you're paying yourself $400 in opportunity costs to do something a teenager would do for $50. Same with cleaning the house and same with driving 40 minutes round trip to the grocery store. Same with answering 200 emails for your side hustle when a virtual assistant could do it for $15 to $30 an hour. A house cleaner runs anywhere from $100 to $200 a visit. A lawn service is $30 to $60 a visit. Grocery delivery costs you $5 to $10 plus a tip versus the 90 minutes you'd spend doing it yourself. None of these things make you feel rich. None of them are sexy. But every hour you buy back is an hour you can put towards something that actually compounds. Think back to Noah. He outsourced his lawn for $50 a week, which freed up roughly 4 hours every Saturday. He used those 4 hours to build a side income stream that now generates $40,000 a year. That cleaner wasn't an expense, it was the seed capital for a business. Lee kept mowing his own lawn every Saturday because he genuinely believed he was saving $50. That $50 cost him conservatively somewhere around $35,000 a year in compounded opportunity. Now I have to be honest about the catch. Buying back your time only works if you actually use the free time on something high value, whether that's deep work, a side income stream, your kids, exercise, sleep, or just not being completely fried by Tuesday. If you outsource your lawn so you can spend 4 extra hours doom scrolling on Sunday afternoon, you've just spent $60 to feel slightly less guilty about being tired. The reframe is that this isn't lifestyle creep. Lifestyle creep is upgrading your car, your apartment, your wardrobe in ways that lock you into a higher burn rate. Buying back your time is the opposite. It frees up the only resource you can literally never get more of. So here's what ties all 7 of these together, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. None of these purchases make you feel wealthy. There is no photo opportunity for just bought an umbrella policy. Nobody flexes their revocable living trust on Instagram. Maxing your HSA is not going to get you matched on Hinge, but every single item on this list is doing the same thing, which is closing the silent leaks in your financial life. The first $250,000 was built on offense, saving, earning, investing, getting in the game. The next $250,000 is built on defense, protecting what's there from lawsuits, taxes, probate, your own panic during a downturn, and the slow grinding tax that your time gets nickel and dimed by every single week. And if all of this feels like work you don't have time for, I want to say something. You don't have to do this all at once. You don't have to do it in a year. Pick one, knock it out, then pick the next one. The people who make it to 1 million aren't the ones who did everything perfectly. They're the ones who didn't quit when it got boring. Let me tell you where Noah and Lee ended up. Same starting point, same income, same milestone. Noah is now 44. He spent his early 30s checking off this list, one boring weekend at a time. Umbrella policy in year 1, CPA in year 2, trust and term life in year 3, real emergency fund by year 4. He outsourced his lawn and got back roughly 200 hours a year, which he put into a side business that now does $40,000 a year. His net worth is sitting at about $850,000. He's not stressed. He's not lying awake. Lee, on the other hand, never got around to any of it. He kept telling himself he'd handle it next year. He got divorced at 37 with no prenup, which took $60,000 and 2 years off his trajectory. He got hit with a surprise tax bill at 39 because nobody told him about the backdoor Roth. He never moved his cash, so when his roof went in 2024, he sold $18,000 of stock at the worst possible moment to cover it. He's 44 now, and his net worth is around $190,000. Same starting point, same income, different defense. Look, $250,000 is genuinely a huge milestone. You're already in the top quarter of households in this country, which puts you ahead of decades of compounding for most people. But 10 years from now, you're 44. The market just had its worst year in a decade. Your portfolio dropped 30%. Most people in your peer group are panicking, selling at the bottom, refinancing into bad rates because they didn't see it coming. You're sitting at your kitchen table on a Sunday morning, drinking coffee, watching the news, and nothing. No frantic phone calls, no spiraling, because you spent 6 boring weekends 10 years ago doing the unglamorous work that almost nobody bothers to do. That is what $250,000 bought you. Not freedom from the market, freedom from caring what it does. Pick one off the list this month. Start there. See you in the next one.